So,
that in God's ultimate power, it almost seems like a joke, this chapter, in an encouraging way. Like, he's not really, this is not by accident. Even in the capture of the ark, which really is a tragic moment for the people of Israel, God is in control.
So we'll come around this way. I was encouraged too by that same thing, but mainly just your whole piece at the end, that God is using even things like death to bring life to his people. The little run you made there was just very encouraging to me, that whatever it looks like, God is still going to win. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been, I think, some time for me before I heard someone like preach very well, like on like the victory of God in circumstances. And, it was good to hear. Again, been a good reminder for me.
I enjoyed that little part at the end where he said, Jesus was in the grave there, day 1, day 2, and day 3, he rises again, and it just gave me hope. It was a moment of hope for me, in the various things where I feel defeated in my life. So, thanks.
Yeah, it was just encouraging to hear and be reminded of God's victory, even in a moment of defeat. And so, just thinking personally, just through different things we go through, there's something the Lord is using in that for his purposes and for his ultimate victory.
Yeah, along the same lines of like, don't count yourself out. Especially when you do feel like things aren't going the way that you intended or wanted, because he can still be working.
Yeah, I think what was most encouraging to me was just this idea that God is at work, even if I don't see it, and even if I don't expect it. There's lots of ways that God's at work for his own glory that really don't have a whole lot to do with me.
Right.
And that's an encouraging thing.
Yeah.
I better pay attention, but it's good.
Yeah.
So what could you have done to improve?
Yeah. Several things, but I think the most glaring as I preached was I did not massage the applications, how I got to my applications. I was like, oh, wow, I'm applying this out of nowhere. Which I didn't really catch in my preparation, obviously, or else I would have addressed it. But I was like, I don't know why they'd believe that that's a legitimate application at this point, because I just started doing it. So it was that was glaring to me.
So I think for me, though I thought you did some good work on context, just the whole framing of when God loses was off-putting at the first. I think that you could have reframed the whole thing and still held that back to other work, but by making that the title, it sort of
I felt that
didn't work like it could have.
100%. Because my outline didn't work with my title.
Right.
They didn't work together.
Exactly.
You read my notes.
I knew that.
Exactly.
This is a lab sermon where you're just like, I know there's weaknesses. I'm gonna still preach my heart out, and
right. And that's what we want.
but it didn't work 100% because it was misleading.
Yeah.
I mean, it was trying to be clickbaity. Obviously, I mean it's like a.
It was.
But I received that. That's good. I was thinking that.
I put down, like, just a couple of application points that I thought were just, like, out of sync with, like, your main point. So, like, your main point was, like, when God seems to be stopped, he's only getting started. And then there were, like, 2 application points, like, how do we put God out of sight and out of mind? And then, like, you know, could this be God interrupting you? And I think both of those are, like, just a little bit, like, off of your main.
For sure.
So.
Thank you.
I thought your people's response being superstition when they stepped over this threshold, I thought that was good, and I think it can be very applicable. And I'm thinking if you could just tease that out a little bit more, what that looks like in real life. Maybe you didn't, I didn't hear it. But
right.
Yeah, I think it's something that we do all the time. We get and then we make all kinds of assumptions because of what we see, and yet they're way off from the truth. And so
yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, I liked your introduction talking about the sore loser thing, but I just thought you could have used it better if you talked about that before you read. Since we read the passage and you start talking about this illustration, I was like, all right, I know like exactly what you're trying to do. So I thought you could. You
knew what I was trying to do, or you didn't know?
I did.
Okay.
I did. So I thought you could have used it more, and it could have landed a little bit better if you
set up the problem.
Set up the problem and then like read the story.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew what direction you're going.
That's helpful.
I guess more so with your second point. Well, I just didn't understand what you mean by defeating the nations, because by the story it didn't really feel like they were defeated.
Yeah.
They were just, you know, oh, this is bad, we're going to move it and get rid of the bad. That's all that happened. So.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I guess my first one will be that you ended the sermon and 1 Samuel 5 didn't really matter all that much. You didn't ever loop back. It was like, when we got to Jesus, it was just like, I want to talk about Jesus in 17 different ways. And then we're going to end. And I was like, well, what does that have to do with, what were we talking about? So like, if I wasn't paying real close attention, I wouldn't have known what we talked about. Right. I just remember like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, clearly. That's good.
And so, for me, there were a couple of different moves you made, and again, recognizing this is the lab, but it didn't help you. One was in that part of when you were talking about God is defeating the nations, and you talk about the irony of God relieving them.
Yeah. I meant to not even say that point, and I started saying it, I was like, oh no.
That was interesting, but it didn't.
It didn't land.
It didn't help you.
Nope.
It didn't help the argument. And there was another one that's already been mentioned about the treading on the threshold, which actually you did try to illustrate, talking about Instagram, something about Instagram and something about pastoral staff. You tried to make the connection, but the point itself was tenuous enough that even if you had landed it correctly, it still, I don't know, would have helped your main argument.
Right.
Though it was interesting, it was like, you could have done without that.
Yeah.
I think one thing you might have been able to do to sort of like help the flow and transitions between like your 2 points a little bit better was like ask some like questions, try teasing out the logic of it. So you know, like, you know, the first one was really clear. It's like, oh, they took the ark. So is their God stronger than our God? And then no, that's not true. So then, like, I think the second point you could illustrate this.
Yeah.
Well, what was it like? Is this nation just stronger than God or something like that? And then you show, no, that's not it either. God like wipes them all out with plagues and stuff like that. And then like you just sort of mix up your speech, and then like everything sort of syncs back up to your name again.
Appreciate that.
Near the end, when you went from like the garden and Abraham and David and that run there to Revelation, I think that could work, but maybe just tighten it up a little bit. And I kind of felt a little bit lost in there somewhere. Yeah, so.
And so sort of with that, you went on that run, which was all good stuff, and then you had these you had more stuff at the end. It just seemed like you were kind of ending it, going on that run. But then there's still some more.
Right.
And when you were doing that run, right before you got to Jesus, did you talk about martyrs of like after Jesus?
Yeah, so I wanted to end on the crucifixion. So I know that it was sort of redemptively out of order, which I felt, but that was my reasoning.
If you did put it in that, you could have went to Jesus and you could have said it even happens now, and then you could have turned into the final application even.
Yeah.
So that would have kind of connected it all even more.
Agree strongly. A lot of mine have been stated. I just want to say I thoroughly agree with everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think that the biggest thing here, I have a positive thing, it's kind of semi-related to this, but like you went way too fast. So you had some pauses, but like you could have paused way more and it would have been way more effective, especially at certain points. So it's not like just speak slower overall, but at certain points, just slow down, right? Because it was all essentially, it was a very similar speed, and it was fast. And when you put that with what a lot of people have pointed out about the transitions, the leaps were just too far.
Yeah.
They were too quick. They were just like, wait, how did you get here?
Right.
Then it feels even more rushed because you're like, oh shoot, what did I miss? But I can't think about that because you're going so fast.
All right, so what did you do well?
Felt like, regardless what, I mean, I didn't get much comments on the main point here. I felt like I was pretty consistently driving that home throughout. So, at least for the most part, it was going in one direction. A few times it got off course, but quickly got back on.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I thought that you argued your argument wherever you were, and that it was a good argument to be made. I mean, it's not just, you're just arguing something. I think once you stated it, even some of the other reservations I had, I said, okay, well, this is setting up to be good, and it's coming from the text. So I thought that was a great argument.
So some stuff was mentioned about like it might have been too long, but I thought the main gospel connection you had was like perfect and great. And I would have I was wondering if you were gonna get there, and I was gonna almost put it in a negative if you didn't
do some sort of
So you did it, and you got to the cross, and then you you put a verse in at the beginning that I was like, all right, that's a little shaky, and then you back it up even more with Hebrews, which is way more explicit. And I was like, all right, you did a great job with the gospel connect. I thought it was knocked it out of the park with that. So.
We mentioned this morning how Ed does a good job with his wording in the sermons, and I thought your wording was really good here. You had some, I don't know if it's called juxtaposition, whatever it is, but you'd use one word and then you'd kind of say the opposite right next to it, or I had an example here somewhere. Blind Dagon bowed, and yet we who see don't bow, or something like that, and something about the hands too. God's hand was heavy, and yet we have a hard time. I forget, but anyway, I appreciate your sort of opposites right next to each other and things like that. It helped. It actually captivated me just to listen. What's this guy after here? So.
Thanks.
Yeah, I thought you did a good job in talking a little bit about the context and not too much about it, and setting up the whole, this arc is representing God's presence, and then the significance of what is happening in this story with that. And I mean, you summarized it well of like how these muteless blind idols see what the people didn't see. Really good line.
Yeah, you had a lot of little lines and like little analogies that helped us stay with you while you're going into the text, like those kind of lines, but also the hot potato thing.
Yep.
I think it's just a little thing that you used well and like kept us engaged in something that we could get lost in easy. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, so you struggled with this big time last year, and so there was a lot of improvement, even though like we talked about how it was probably too quick. At least it was clear that this was a sermon headed in the same direction, right? So there were some parts that were like little digressions or whatever, but it was clear that like you set it up, this is where we're going, and then we went there, we walked through the story, then we got to the end of the story. So it was much more cohesive than anything else you've ever preached.
Just
good.
Dude's backhand is so powerful.
That's great. More cohesive than anything else you've ever preached.
Trevor, can you give us some more?
Thank you, Wes. I received that compliment, Wes.
Even though you never take any of my other compliments, Wes. Yeah, that was a good one.
So I agree with everybody else about the phrasing. I mean, even from the beginning to the end. Beginning, you talked about the full flavor of defeat and just little things that I had never heard. Simple words that you put together in unusual ways that actually help to screw some things in. And I appreciated too the applications at the end. One which included one of those things, bowing the knee to Jesus is the strongest thing you can do. I thought it was a nice way to phrase. We were talking about phraseology.
It's not a word.
It is a word.
It's a nice way to help people remember what you're trying to leave them with. And so I thought that was helpful.
I think your application to like those who like feel like losers right now was like really good. You just said something like God hasn't been defeated in your life or something to that effect, and I was just like, I appreciated that application. I thought you did a good job with that.
Yeah, I liked how your main point kind of came through it several times, and then near the end you said in the losing of Christ's life we find victory, something like that. And it was something that I think Jeremy recently talked to me about, but you held the gospel up, and in a way that is mysterious and beautiful, yet a little bit, mysterious, I guess would be the word.
Yeah.
And it just makes it all the more attractive, so I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I also enjoyed how you got to really the root of the problem these people were having was that they did not surrender to God.
Yeah.
He's showing himself, they weren't surrendering to him, and that's sort of the kind of the heart of the passage here of God's victory, but also our problem.
Even though, you did talk a little fast, I thought you were yourself up there, like the same Erik I talked to out in the whatever that room is.
Waiting in line for the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just felt like you are finding your voice and being yourself. I think it's just super nice to hear. Helps us listen to you well too.
Yeah, shoot, you took mine. So in a similar way, like we were even talking today, like with Ed about why he says what he says when he says it, and you were asking that question. It seemed like you listened because that was very much like you were way more off the page today than you usually are. You were very more like talking to us in the language of your Viking self, and so it just felt way more like, okay, oh, he actually like is preaching to us instead of like presenting a manuscript.
Yeah.
So kudos.
Good job.
Yeah.